So we're a team that's like across the world, stationed right now, and so we're all sort of in this like really, really enthusiastic ethos of, oh my gosh, we're launching, technical difficulties and coordination issues, and so we're having fun today. And really thank you for coming and celebrating with us. So tonight, what we'll do is kind of talk more in depth about the purpose, why we're doing what we're doing, why we're launching this ICO. And I'll talk quite a bit about that purpose and also about Holochain. I'm not sure what the kind of level of technical understanding is here, but hopefully there will be something for everyone. And then Anders back there will talk about the beginning of the application ecosystem that's already forming on top of Holochain. And then I'll segue and start talking about Holo, which is what we are launching right now today. And then after that, we'll have Jean Russell, who is the project lead, as I was saying. She'll phone in and give some more details for how to actually get in on the ICO if you wish. And she'll talk a little bit more about how we made some of the kind of unique decisions, what we chose to do for the ICO. So then, hopefully we'll have some time to meet each other, and we'll take questions, and then have some champagne. Yeah. Okay, excellent. All right, so I'd like to introduce Holochain not so much as a new piece of technology or a blockchain alternative, but a mode of storage that actually facilitates digital liberation. And I'll talk about what that means to me. So I'll say that, just to introduce myself, I'm Emmeline Friedman, and I'm joining this project as an academic. And so this is very much a passion project for me, in the sense that I was studying, looking around the world, primarily studying the research tools that I was using, right, the internet. And I realized that there were some serious issues. I was a student of psychoanalysis, and so I looked at what was going on, like what I saw online, in terms of particular sort of humanity-crushing issues. Right, so just thinking about what digital tools have facilitated for us in the past, particularly in the past few decades, right? Exclusion, right? So as I was doing my research for, say, the internet, what I found was, right, something that is probably of no surprise to anyone at all anymore, monopolistic control of the web, right, which was a stark change in the 90s. The use of these tools for financialization and speculation, right, so there's this red tape problem right now, right? And then the second thing that really stuck out to me was the fact that a lot of the companies that run major apps online right now are companies that sort of like provoke us to speak, right? Provoke us to type to each other, to say what's on our mind, to give our opinions on absolutely damn near everything. Things like that. So it's kind of like this huge outpouring of I call it speech, right? Whenever we're expressing ourselves, like this huge outpouring of human input, right? And then, right, these same companies, right, Facebook, Google, right, they appropriate what we're saying and doing for their purposes, right? Some people call it participatory apps, right? The ones where you give your opinions and your feedback and rate each other and whatnot, as data factories. Right? Because the data that we all create, it sits on their servers and it makes them massive tons of money to retain their monopoly status. Same goes in terms of the appropriation of everything we're doing. Same goes for sharing economies, right? And I put it in quotes because the typical, right? I was tutoring on a tutoring platform, and I found out maybe 6 months into my work that the company took around 45% out between the interaction, right? Stuff like that, as well as algorithmic control, right? I'm sure we're all familiar with the fact that we have no idea, right, how Google's algorithms work, right? There's no way for us to audit the processes. And then the final problem that I have with the digital economy is chilling, social chilling, right? So there's the kind of well-known problem of surveillance, right? We have no idea really who's listening to us or who's seeing us give our input. And that's also because everything is taken out of context, right? When you have no idea who is listening to you and when, you don't really get the luxury of fitting things for the purpose that you had in mind, right? So it sort of robs us of intentionality in this way. So, the conclusion that I can do pretty much, the reason why for me Holochain is like, wow, is because cultural memory and social forms are determined in the digital economy, right? And this was like a boring result to me when I came to it. Yeah, this was like a boring result to me when I came to it. I was like, really, couldn't it be something fancier? But I think really the way to intervene on these processes. Thanks, Google. Yeah, so the way to intervene on these processes is through infrastructural changes. Right, like I hear a lot of activists, like the Electronic Frontiers Foundation people, right? Lots of people interested in digital activism, who sort of talk about the problems that we have as individual users, right? Like sort of don't tread on me problems, privacy issues, things like this. And of course, these are problems. The fact of the matter is that. It's really the way that the infrastructure is designed to sort of shift the power that we have collectively, right? I mean, big data is really just kind of like a meta map of everything that huge groups of people are doing, right? So with centralized infrastructure and the digital economy functioning the way that it is, what happens is that all of the power of our collective production ends up being used in ways that don't necessarily correspond to collective interest, right? I'm American, and the massive wealth inequality is felt there quite profoundly, but I'm sure here too. So moving on though, the question that I kept asking myself was this. It was on the next slide. Not that slide, don't worry for it. Yeah, it was, can we reinvent ourselves as autonomous collectives of enunciation and leave behind our techno-consumerism? And what does that look like? And so I think actually that Holochain can do this. And that's because on Holochain apps, users can choose sort of where the flows of their data are going, right? Like you can choose to redirect all of that information that you're producing all the time away from feudal manners, right? That's how Facebook has kind of become lovingly known to some, and the centralized systems I was talking about, and towards social projects where they actually have a say right, and how all our collective intelligence is used. And also to be more selective of our interactions, right? For example, if I post a picture of myself on Facebook smoking a cigarette, I may not want that information to go to third-party agencies who will sell that data to insurance providers, right? Who will raise my premiums because I'm smoking. Things like this. So as well on Holochain, and this is something that it's natively optimized for, built into the system, is that users can choose how they connect their applications, which ones to bridge, which ones not to bridge. And so for me, this really touches on freedom of association, which when I was like a little kid online, that was probably my favorite part of being on the internet, was that I felt like I suddenly had all this freedom to associate with people who I wouldn't have otherwise been able to, right? And if anything has changed, like really markedly to me as a person since then, it's that instead of kind of organizing myself with others as I saw fit, it frequently feels like sort of being organized from above. Like I find myself in groups or, taking suggestions about things where I was like, I don't really know if that is a part of my behavior that I want to bring to the fore of my life, things like that. So not just for users, right? We have to think of how these changes might go into action for people who are responsible for building this infrastructure, right? So for developers, the question is, right, how do we build this user autonomy into applications? And so on Holochain, developers can build lighter, faster, and less expensive applications, which is really important, right, that they be less expensive, simply because when you're accepting venture capital, it's usually quite difficult to make decisions that service more the users than the people who are expecting growth or a particular amount of profit. Right? And so with the rise of blockchain, right, this other decentralized computing infrastructure, we sort of saw developing this choice between two evils, right? Like accept venture capital or join this sort of massive energy expenditure and speculation instrument that is now blockchain. So another part that developers are likely to be more concerned with are system-wide vulnerabilities. And when I talk about the architecture a little bit, you'll see why Holochain is quite a secure system, even though it's not optimized for anonymity. What else? Yeah, and also addressing, right, we want to address power symmetries, like giving users the ability to opt in to rules and requirements as sort of a first step. I'll talk about all this other stuff. So, can you go to the next? All right. This is looks like an ancient graphic, but this is a really important one because essentially this is the structure of Holochain. So what you're seeing here is the interplay between individual users who have a source chain, a shared distributed hash table, which is used for data validation, and the application, which has all of its logic and all of its validation rules, this sort of thing. And so we call Holochain an agent-centric system, as opposed to a data-centric system. Because, and this is part of the reason why it's so lightweight, is that unlike blockchain, where everyone carries around this massive and quickly growing copy of a ledger of absolutely everything that happens, on the Holochain, people simply carry around here. You get the next. Yeah, so this is what you saw, the source chain, right there. So what happens is that individuals carry around their own source chain. And this is sort of what we talk about with owning our own data. And this, so everyone owns their own data. And the first thing that you'd see on your chain is this. It says Holochain DNA. So you have the application that you're a part of. And we kind of like to think of applications more as like communities that you're joining, right? And if you're joining a community, it's going to have very explicit rules that you need to follow. So agents carry a copy of all of their own transactions for every application, sort of combined on their chain, in addition to a copy of that application. So with everyone using applications, carrying them also, that means that if there are any changes in the application, you as an individual user have to sort of sign off on that change. Like you have to be willing to write it again to your own chain, which makes every update much more possible to make into kind of like a democratic process. So, can we go back one? So that's the source of the individual hash chain. And then the way that it works, right, is that if we are, say we're doing a transaction together, something like that, when two people are interacting, it's like each party signs what happens to their own source chain. And they also audit the last few entries of that source chain. So if we're on a ride-sharing app, for example, I could check and, I'm the passenger and you're the driver. We would both write the transaction that's happening, like this ride at this time, cost this much, whatever the case is. And we would also audit each other's chains to see whether or not that person had altered their chain. And if someone is found altering their chain, they're simply kind of blacklisting themselves from that application community, right? So the idea here, if you think in terms of metaphors of like what people actually do in communities, is like you can lie about yourself all you want, but through gossip on the distributed hash table, people cross-check not only the person's record, but also this sharded record of all of these transactions that people on the application are holding randomly, like little fragments of it. So when I'm auditing your chain to make sure that you haven't tampered with anything that you've done in the past, I would check what I see with random peers on the network to make sure that, yes, in fact, what I see on your chain is what I see in this distributed hash table. So individual hash chain and distributed hash table. And again, this is sort of all brought together by whatever the particular application rules are. Okay, so this is what I was just talking about. So the distributed hash table is essentially the way that we ensure both data provenance, right, and individual chain immutability. So in addition, when you have a Holochain app running, you're also keeping like a little portion of this table. So it's like everyone's pretty much equally involved in the security of that, right? The security expert or something is simply the fact that you're also involved in running this. Great. Okay, so distributed apps, each one is their own Holochain. So essentially you have like a ton of different holochains, each running all of these different application rules and logics, and people opting in to apps as they please in the structure that I just iterated. And so when you're building these apps, you can connect them to a web browser for user interfaces. They also have pluggable GUIs. Yeah, you're also reading and writing on users' local sign chains, right, doing that data transfer to and from the shared DHT, as I mentioned, which is, again, what makes holochain substantially lighter weight than blockchain. Right, because it takes essentially just downloading a piece of software in order to have that security validation that you would otherwise need like a huge ledger of all transactions for. And the really great thing, in addition to the fact that these applications can be written in JavaScript or in Lisp, the really great thing is that, well, as I said, you can connect apps differently for different agents, but also the apps are fit, in terms of security, they're fit for purpose, right? So one of the biggest issues that we saw with blockchain tech was that the same security measures are required for, doing writing a list of names in a registry or in a chat application, as it would be for transferring millions of euros. Right? So the idea is that if we're interested in each of these apps as their own sort of data collection and data stewarding communities, they would need to be designed quite differently in terms of what's needed. Okay, so I hope it's clear sort of how some of the problems I was talking about earlier are actually kind of ameliorated from just the way these apps are built. So as I like to think of it, it sort of facilitates this little exodus, right? We just like start doing something else as a means of getting away from some of the exploits of the digital economy. And this is because, right, I mentioned infrastructural changes. So when we actually distribute the storage and the processing of our data, we're actually distributing that same power of collective intelligence, of collective wealth, and of our memory, right? So for me, the really kind of the different thing with Holochain is that it's not so much like we're trying to build these systems where we don't need to trust each other, and we can limit our interactions as much as possible, right? But it's actually like kind of forces the question instead, like, what do you want to opt into, right? Like, what technology do you actually care to use, right? Like, which social engineering projects do you want to be a part of? Because it's happening, right? Like, it's happening either way. So there's this sort of like organized or reorganized feel to the web today, right? So I'm quite ashamed, of course, that this presentation, right, is contributing to the growth and the reproduction of Google's algorithms, their view of the world, their protocols, their practices, and their ideologies. Yeah. So specifically, the types of applications that you can build on holochains are things that are going to be much more familiar for people working in the commons transition or the peer-to-peer transition. And so these types of apps, and this is what holochains do best, right? What holochains do best is governance, collaboration, and organizational tools. right? So things like Lumio already exists, right? But applications quite similar to that, where you're involved in some form of democratic decision-making or group alignment. Also on social networks and social media, right? So, so you could run a full Holochain Facebook-style node on a cell phone if you wanted to. And also platform cooperatives. Is anyone familiar with platform co-op? That is, yeah. So essentially, like taking the principles of a cooperative and putting that online. And I kind of think of all Holochain apps as digital co-ops in a way, because the members of that application at any time could do something like choose to contribute their collected data to a particular science project that they were interested in, or a study, right? It's like if we create a community rideshare app, we could come potentially to our city with all of the data that we've collected and say like, hey look, you know, like maybe there's an important infrastructure change that we can make, knowing what we know about traffic flows from our application, right? And again, just to like really highlight, like Amazon does that anyway. So organize with the organized. Yeah, and then as I've been kind of referencing just casually, directly peer-to-peer sharing economy apps. So, for instance, I could sort of get over my massive frustration about that tutoring platform, where they were taking 45% out of the interaction. I could be like, hey, okay, it's time to launch a platform where there's no company in the middle, right? Because the data doesn't have to sit on anyone's servers. Everyone brings a piece of that infrastructure. So we could make a tutoring platform where, you know, maybe the system administrator or the developers involved and the community activists, right, are taking 5%, something like that, right? Like cost of operation, again, like the co-op. And then the last one that we're really, really optimized for, and this is our big like FU to blockchain, is tokenless cryptocurrencies. And they're tokenless because they operate through mutual credit. And mutual credit is like double entry accounting principles, where it'll become a lot more clear when I talk about how we're actually doing this as the first application on Holochain, first large-scale application on Holochain. But essentially, using a mutual credit cryptocurrency, everyone just has, again, their source chain, which has embedded into it their particular credit limits based on reputation relative to the resource being managed in the currency. Okay, so yeah, I'll talk a little bit more later about how we're running this first token mutual credit cryptocurrency. But first, Anders will talk to us about the applications that already exist on Holochain and sort of the vision that we have for that.
Really lucid presentation of extremely complex information. Thank you. Do we have the Flutter demo on that computer? Who says computer? Oh, probably not. Okay. Okay, I wanted to demo Flutter, but we don't have it set up on the presentation computer. So I will just describe it, and maybe go to Twitter if you can find a picture. Search for not accurate Flutter. But yeah, so anyway, we have, I'm going to be talking about the Holochain applications ecosystem and our plans for actually building this immense project of many different applications. So this is a really complex project. Oh yeah, they did a screenshot here. So this is a really complex project, and the theme that I want to introduce is a self-evolving vehicle for curriculum. So I got a slide that we'll look at in a second that talks about the etymology of the word curriculum, and it comes from a chariot or a race course, like a circular racetrack. So it's a really interesting word because it's both the road and the vehicle that you use to travel the road. So a curriculum or a chariot or here we go with the demo. There's also the words Merkaba or Yama, which mean vehicle and also kind of some type of carrier or vessel. But yeah, let's take a look at the clutter demo first. Or picture. Oh, this is a picture. Okay, so this is one app that already works on Holochain. What you can do, you can download the Holochain Alpha. Alpha 0.1 is what we're at right now, so we're at early alpha. And you can install it with just 3 commands in the command line. It works on Linux, Mac, or Windows. And then you just type one more, or maybe I think it's the 3rd command actually. And it runs Clutter. So this runs as a program on your local computer. And this is how Holochain works, but it's synchronizing in the background across the network with the other Holochain nodes.
This is not on Android, right?
No, not yet. No, but it will. Or we might use the Holo portal, which I think she'll be talking about later, so that you don't have to actually run it on your phone, burning up your battery power, which is part of why Holo exists. So this is a Twitter phone. It's really early version, as you can see. It doesn't have very many features yet, but it actually does work. So you can have a fully decentralized Twitter where there's no company in the middle. No one owns the data. The data is going encrypted directly from you through the PHT with the other peer nodes to whoever is following you. And it works, and it's fun. And as soon as we have user accounts and backposting to Twitter and the ability to attach pictures, I will be switching to this myself because I don't want to use Twitter either. Can we go back to the, thank you. Yeah, so other apps in the works. One that's not on this list is Transactor, which is the basic mutual credit currency app. That one's already under development, which it should be because we promised that in May. And also the DPKI app was developed, I think, during the summer internship program. So the DPKI is distributed private key infrastructure, and this is what allows you to have a number of different private keys for your different encrypted accounts, basically, and then have those protected in something like a wallet. So we already have a fully decentralized DPKI implementation. It needs to be updated, but it does work, or it did work at least at one point.
Sorry, what does that stand for?
Distributed, is it private or public? I think it's public. Distributed public key infrastructure. And this is a key, I don't think there's been a good implementation of DPKI yet that's decentralized. And if it's decentralized and you have the proper basic protections, it's a very easy to use and safe way to basically start to build a real system to keep all of your passwords in one place in terms of the user experience. And then we're going to build on top of that with an identity suite, just basic things like user accounts and the ability to log into Holochain from your Holochain apps from any normal web browser, which is part of what Holo is for as a trusted web portal. And that'll be linked with some kind of decentralized account application that will be developed very soon. Holo Chat has been developed a little bit. That one's not under active development right now, but it will be probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks resume active development, and that's basically a Slack phone. There's a self-governance application. We have one colleague, Ray, who is really enthusiastic about designing really advanced self-governance tools for building, blocking, self-organizing organizations. We have a Fractal Wiki, which we're doing a week-long hackathon. It's 5 or 7 days. 7-day hackathon in London where we'll be focusing just on Fractal Wiki and different aspects of Fractal Wiki. So this is a wiki where it's not just tons of pages everywhere, but it's also, pages can contain other pages. It's called transclusion, and you can zoom down and keep cycling through holographic spirals of fractal wiki pages on pages. And it's really cool because you can start to build new types of syntheses. And then I would like to invite you to our chat rooms. I'll do this again at the end so we don't break the flow, but if you go to chat.holochain.org, there are many chat rooms for different types of apps and different categories of apps like we have a room for education apps, we have a room for activism apps, we have a room for local permaculture apps, where we're talking about permaculture and also local currencies, microcurrencies. So there are a ton of different apps and topics that are being discussed. And these hackathon events, like this event and the other events we have running and will continue to be running, are just going to be adding a lot of people to these channels and connecting people on these different topics until there's a spark and a team forms to build each of these apps. So our long-term vision, we've been faithfully calling this full-blown Scepter. And Scepter is the larger, longer-term project that has been around for about 10 years that spawned Holo and Holochain in August. And Holochain has been working since last March. Started last December, or rather November. Scepter itself is, Holochain is one of 6 parts that will build into full-blown Scepter, where we'll have a semantic interprotocol. So this is the protocol to end all protocols. The problem of compatibility, where everyone says, you know, we need a new standard. There's an XKCD comic about this. Where someone says, we need a new standard. There are 80 standards, and how do we need to, you know, unify all these standards. And then the next panel of the comic is, now there are 81 standards. So people keep trying to unify all the standards, and they just end up producing a new territorial specification. But Scepter is actually the end to that, because it's the interprotocol that all the different projects will gradually arrive at together, and it's a deterritorialized mode of protocol-based communication, where the protocols actually become complex enough to talk about the negotiation of protocols.
I'm not a techie, so I mind if I ask a stupid question so I don't
get lost?
When you talk about an interprotocol, can you give an example? Is HTTP the kind of thing you're talking about? What do you mean?
I think HTTP, I don't think I call it an interprotocol. This has never existed before, but it is the level of HTTP in terms of the foundational nature of how this will affect protocols. Oh, okay. So I'm just going to speak louder, I'll try. I'm not allowed to speak it. So interprotocols have never existed before.
Can you give a few examples of some protocols? Like, if I have around these 80 protocols, like, give me examples of protocols, so I understand what creature or what kind of class of creature.
HTTP is a protocol, yes.
Can you give me more than one example?
Sure. There are chat protocols. Different chat networks use different protocols. An API, an application programming interface that powers all of our web services. Each of those is a protocol. It's just I'm just using it as a general term. There's also, had a good example, protocols. I forgot my third example, but protocol, just any type of structured communication according to rules. Just in a general sense. So the language and grammatical capabilities that will evolve in Scepter will actually allow protocols to negotiate themselves. And anyone who is interested in open platforms will either have a project that is easy to make compatible with Scepter, or will already be compatible with Scepter. So what I'm going to be talking about as we go on to the next slide is how Holo will embed itself as a distributed governance layer and gradually create a real system of decentralized democracy and decentralized communication, decentralized app production. I started talking about the etymology of curriculum just to wrap this up. This is how do we build a vehicle that can take us to the future? How do we build something now that we can start to use and talk about now that will bring us to a place where we have a robust, complex ecosystem with replacements for all of the apps that we already use and that are owned by corporations. So a self-evolving platform, and instead of having apps that take value and they talk about value that's over there, they label that value over there, they extract the value and index the value. How can we return that to the platform so that everything is imminent where the value is? Next slide. Great. Okay, so the DAO. I love this new webpage. So the DAO, if you don't know, the Ethereum DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization, was a specific Ethereum project and a specific Ethereum app that was built on top of the Ethereum blockchain. And the DAO had several problems that caused it to implode almost immediately. So the joke here, the DAO, the way it works is they did a bunch of fundraising with an ICO. It was the first huge ICO of cryptocurrency. And then their system was they're basically going to vote to distribute those funds to projects which would improve the Ethereum DAO and its capabilities and its ability to make complex decisions. So this is similar to like taxation, where all your taxes go into a big pile, and then they get redistributed through college applications to students, for example. So that's one of the problems, is that their model of what they were actually doing was very simplistic. It was basically, let's put all our money in a big pile, and then we'll hand it out to specific projects, and those projects will build something interesting. Another really huge problem, and this is why the DAO really failed, is that they had no security model. They're doing a data-centric as opposed to agent-centric paradigm. So there's real money, and there's money that can be owned and can be stolen. And so smart contracts are contracts as software. If the contract makes a mistake, it's still right. It's still correct. So if the contract accidentally overpays, or double pays, or accidentally gives away all of your money because it's an automatic contract and there was a bug in the software, then that money is gone. And according to crypto anarchists, that was a legal transaction. And so the DAO was almost immediately hacked. And like, it was $3 million was stolen almost immediately. And people, 3 billion? 3 billion.
Oh, no.
No? More than 3 million. I forget the exact number. Was stolen.
I think it's 60.
16 million.
60.
16.
16,
yeah. So 16. 60. That's a lot more than 3 million. Yeah, so 16 was stolen from the DAO very soon after it launched. And this is because they didn't have a security model. Their security model, I read the website, and this is why I did not buy any DAO tokens, is because it said, our security expert will read every smart contract and make sure they contain no bugs.
That's impossible.
It's not possible. There are always bugs in software, and if your software will send all of your money away and you can't get it back, then you're screwed. And that's exactly what happened. They had to fork the Ethereum software. They had to make an executive decision to invalidate that entire history in order to return the money that was stolen. And so people lost faith because they had no model of how to govern those decisions. And that's what Holochain excels at. So they had no model besides let's vote on where the money goes. Yeah, so the joke here is, we'll use a machine that can, a Turing-complete machine, and it can do any instructions to decide when transactions are made, and then we'll allow anyone to write scripts, and they're going to lose all their votes. Yeah. So how do we distribute a giant pile of money in a fair way, in a way that makes sense, in a way that actually produces the goal of, everyone has what they need, and we can build amazing social projects that improve everyone having what they need and that kind of thing. And these are some of the major ways that Holochain and what our project is can do this. We can leverage the governance tools that are built into Holochain core, and also that will be built as applications on top of Holochain to create a fair distribution of funds. We can have a complex ecosystem. Instead of just a simplistic model of redistributing currency, we can have many functional parts that do specific qualitatively distinct things, and they play roles in governance society, a whole society. And we can have, localized microsourcing plays into that. So each app, you might have your lawnmower credits. If you're mowing lawns with the lawnmower app, you might have your cat sitting credits. You might have your something more complex, like some kind of financial negotiation metadata. And these would be in different apps. That's hyper-local to that particular context and what that app does and what that data means. But then we can gradually build more connections across the different applications to make that data meaningful in a more objective or general context. And then also microtransactions are a great way to continually redistribute currency from people who have more of it to people who have less of it, so that there's a continual smoothing of the wealth gap. That microtransactions can be a good way to build that systemically, and that can be a per app design. Great. Okay, so ecosystem in general is a word that means something that's complex and it has many qualitatively distinct parts, it's diverse, and because of that diversity, it's healthy. Especially when we talk about this word cybernetic feedback loops are loops where information is visible or exposed back to the system. So, and that mere information exposure produces new behaviors. So, Holo as an organization right now is centralized, and that's not a secret. It's a regular type of organization, and we're acting as a transitionary entity between the normal centralized web and this decentralized web that we're trying to launch and build with the application ecosystem. So in order to do that, Holo gradually has to embed itself as various Holochain apps that implement the functions of a typical organization without any centralized faculties or governance. And so it's kind of like building a plane with like a bunch of different parts. All the parts do something different, and in the end, the plane can fly. The cybernetic aspect is that this governance can be informational. By exposing the right information to the right eyes in the right aspects of the application's ecosystem, we can build complex collective decision-making tools that are non-coercive and that don't have any centralization. So this is a new type of design, and cybernetics, the field, I think it was the early 1900s and then really took off in the 1970s, I think. And this is the field of how to design these information circuits to make systems work. Yeah, so self-governance can occur in two ways in Holochain. In the core platform, by Alpha 3, we're going to include a migration function and backposting and fork blocking is what I've been calling it. And so what this means, because each Holochain app is actually, each version of each Holochain app is essentially its own private network, when you upgrade your app to a new version, we have to build specific code so that you can continue talking with the people who have not updated yet. This is good because it means everything is hyper-local, but we have to do extra work there. Backposting so you can continue talking, migration so you can choose, and that's the fork blocking. So you can choose which version of the upgrade you want to take. If you've got two competing groups that are suggesting updates to your app, there's going to be a built-in function by Alpha 3 so that users can exert pull on developers moving to which version they prefer. So this will create a tighter loop of cybernetic communication and control between users and the people who are making the software they use, because we can just fork and leave if we don't like the changes that are being made. So those are just the basic features that will be added to the Holochain core platform to allow a basic level of open source blocking in how software is developed. But on top of that, we're also going to be building a lot of advanced governance tools that have never existed before and allow decentralized organizations to be imagined and self-managed. All of these things together kind of equal governance from the way that I think about it. So versioning is just any Holochain you can say, you can fork it and you can say, I'm going to take a copy of this and change what it says, and then I'm going to leave a note that says, I made a copy of this and changed it. So you can fork things. This is like in Wikipedia, it would be saying like, instead of editing this page, I'm going to take a copy of this page and make it my own and edit my copy. Fork blocking, like I said, that allows you to choose which page of Wikipedia you would prefer to look at if there are multiple versions. Decisions would be when there's actually a group of people that needs to decide something together, instead of each person choosing individually which page they prefer, if there are multiple versions, this would be everyone coming together to decide that they want to look at one page together. And then pluggable governance, this is like basically a drop-down box within each context, within each little part of the whole system, that lets you choose which governance model you would like to use. Would you like to vote together? Would you like to have consensus? Would you like to have a discussion with no decisions made? All the different types of governance models that people could implement as user interfaces will be pluggable in each context that uses the pluggable governance mixer. And then value tracking. Farananda is one of the three main people working on Holochain. Is actually just a few days in Ashland, I think. She's doing a hackathon to design a value tracking platform. So this is a comprehensive platform to track all kinds of work, all kinds of labor that are done, social labor, emotional labor, all kinds of hard labor that are involved in a community, so that everyone's contributions can be accounted for, including the harder to track things. This will make it a lot easier to track things like emotional labor and communication, private chats that are meaningful to the group but maybe private. These are the kinds of things that a value tracking application could make visible, so that there can be a fairer distribution of resources based on how much people are participating in the community. Next slide. Okay, so on Holochain, all Holochain apps are required to include their source code as part of the gossip protocol. And the other nodes actually hash this so that they can verify 100% certainly that you're running exactly the same code as them. And this is a slightly unusual method, but it works really well because you can verify that people are using the same protocol as you. They're running the exact same code. Or at least they say they are, and then you can validate their data also. Although all Holochain apps, because of this technical requirement, are technically open source, because the source code is actually included in the communication, the Holo app is going to be closed source legally from 1.0 to 2.0. And the reason for this is that we want to prevent bad copies from forming early on. They're called shitcoins in blockchain communities. And so these bad coins people just make just to do a quick ICO, and they take a bunch of money and then they sell their coins and cash out back to Bitcoin or back to fiat currency, other fiat currency. So we're doing this legal thing so that we don't want bad copies of Holo. We want good copies of Holo. When we get to about 2.0, we're going to legally open source the code. We're going to encourage people to copy Holo, which is an app on Holochain that we're going to talk more about. And we're going to encourage people to replicate the success, which we will hopefully have with our ICO that's starting tonight and in a couple days. So, yeah, so we're using the Holo, we did the crowdfund, and now we're doing the ICO to create this economy. It's a new economy for a new application. And what we want to do is allow people to fork and copy what we're doing so that they can have the same success in whatever apps they're launching. It'll be a combination crowdfunding platform with a number of tools to create and design specific qualitatively distinct currencies for qualitatively distinct contexts and platforms. Like I said, like the lawnmower app, babysitter app, cat sitting app, whatever kind of context you're thinking of for any kind of application, there's some type of communication that's occurring there. And by conceptualizing it as value tracking, you can use that information as metadata to communicate about value. It's getting really, really abstract. Yeah. So to bring it back here, a couple specific tools that we're going to have for our metacurrency design. There's the value tracking app that I mentioned will be a major component of Holochain in general. We're going to also build increasingly accessible tools for developing applications. We already have a scaffolding tool, and we'll have more. And then also this hackathon team that we're doing will, we're developing a developer training program, and we'll be going to different locations doing different hackathons in order to train developers and help them design and develop the apps and the specific microcurrencies that they are interested in. So, okay, so now it's getting more big picture again. So like, how do we make a pipeline so that people can get involved in this project and be fairly compensated? So, how can you become a member of the Holo team? How can you join a hackathon community? How can you be supported or have the resources that you need to do the activism project you want to do, or design and create the app that you want to make? How can you get out of the rat race and into this new economy that is building, this new abundance economy that we're trying to build? We need to get as many people into this as possible, as quickly as possible, as fairly as possible. And it's really, really hard. So how can we design the system fairly, and how can we make it so that it's possible to onboard huge numbers of people to this new lifestyle? And so part of this is actually something I'm working on, is how can we build this pipeline and design this pipeline and make it work so that people who are most involved in the Holochain community can move towards getting some kind of compensation for that. And this term fair compensation, I think it's, I usually prefer this other term, recognition and resources. So, because fair compensation is all about, I want to get what's mine, when really that's not what people want. People want to be socially recognized, and they want to have what they need to do what they want. Fair compensation is a capitalist term, basically. So, and if we drop this idea of scarce resources that are finite and need to be distributed fairly, it's actually more about how can everyone be recognized for what they are doing, and how can everyone have what they need to do what they want to do. So I'm just designing and developing this pipeline to become a paid builder of open source distributed applications for no corporation, for no specific project, for whatever project you want to do and whatever project you can get a few people to support you in, basically. And not just a developer, we'll probably start with creating systems for developers to become compensated, but that will quickly expand to all kinds of roles using a kind of value tracking system. So all kinds of value can be rewarded fairly. And then everyone is a full hold-on. This is, instead of everyone being a part of a group, part of an organization, it's more like one organization per person. So we're all whole actors, we're all CEOs, we're all kings of our own company, we're all CEOs of our own company, kings of our own kingdom. And those groups then, just like nations have to negotiate in basically a fair playing field, plus violence, it'll be a fair playing field, hopefully no violence, where we're all negotiating as equal peers, instead of as people trying to get others to join their group. And then there's more groups than people. Next slide. Yeah, so our audience for building this ecosystem, can I actually see the next slide? Of course, it's users is the main audience. We're all users of this platform, we'll all be users. And this is for another context. We're talking about the audience for building the actual application ecosystem. So the four audiences that I've seen that we need to make this work are hardcore developers who are excited by the technology, app designers who are excited by their particular app idea and they really want to make it, people who are creating GUIs or designing a user experience, and they're really excited about that design process and they love to make beautiful interfaces. There's a lot of open source projects that have really bad GUIs, or they have no GUI, or they look down on GUIs, and that's not going to work for something that can have mass appeal. So we need to really appeal to GUI designers and have them involved. And then also non-tech activists, people who are not technically specialized, but they have a project, they have a dream, they have something they're trying to change or improve in the world, they're trying to change society and improve the world. And these people are amazing because they're kind of the end user and they're the reason they're doing this, and also they're part of the mass. Like they bring this to everyone else. They bring this technology and they can say, look, we have the technology now to make a fair organization that is not even an organization. So all of these audiences are really key audiences that we'll be interfacing with as we go forward. So I'm just me quoting myself, but yeah. So what I see actually is the series of hackathons we've been running, and as we continue moving forward with developing the application ecosystem and the developer training program and other ways of accelerating activism, basically, and accelerating the development of software for activism, is hackathons and hackerspaces and networking these as a movement, a cyclone. So the idealized hackathon cyclone, the Deleuzian nomadic war machine, picks one up and whirls one around from destination to destination until involvement in local, longer-term projects causes one to settle somewhere, ending the nomadic tour. These roving events are thus an acceleration of cross-pollination amongst hackers and hackerspaces. So this is the next slide.
So tell us what Deleuzian means.
It's Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari. They wrote a book called 1,000 Plateaus.
And we're all supposed to know.
They're continental philosophers.
continental philosopher.
Yeah. No, you're not supposed to know that. It's fine. It's a writing style. It's fine. It's meant to be obscure. Okay, so the question is why are we on a hackathon tour? Why are we moving around? Why are we stirring all this up? Where's funding coming from? How can we fund this more? Why are we doing this? How long does it continue? Is there a point where we'll say, no more hackathons, we've done enough hackathons, Holochain has enough publicity? And the answer is no. This is activism, so it keeps going, it keeps accelerating. The reason we're doing this is to build this thing where people can, get picked up and travel and do their dreams and be activists and create new projects and succeed at those projects. And then they maybe will be able to settle wherever they want, those kinds of things. So how can we create a movement where anyone can get involved, go where they want, do where they want, have freedom of movement, have freedom of just basic needs being met, those kinds of things. And basically Holo is the answer, which we'll get to in a few minutes. So we can network anarchist spaces, accelerate activism, and we can post-blockchain projects are the love child of Bitcoin Airbnb. Thank you.
Is that your view quoted?
No, I don't know who said that, but I think someone did.
I'm a journalist, so it's pissing me off out of the source.
I'm sorry, I can't remember the source, but someone said that. I think it was on Facebook. See the next. So this goes back to organize or be organized. Whose map are you on? Who's indexing your data? If you're not on a vehicle, if you're not on a curriculum or a project that's moving you forward and a project that you own or you know the people who are doing it and you trust them, that means you're probably using technology and platforms that are not owned by you, probably not trusted by you if you look into it. Yeah, would you click the link? Yeah, so this is the map. This is map.hellohackers.org. It's a tool for long-term community vision and purpose alignment that we made for our hackathons. And what it is, it's a map of all of the application ideas that I've been collecting from different people, different projects, and it is organized into 7 layers here. So we've got, this is Holochain core platform. This is meta and politics. And these are all Holochain potential applications. So when people bring ideas to hackathons or when people tell me about ideas online, I add them to the relevant chat room, I talk with them about their idea, I connect them with anyone I know who's working on that same idea in order to spark these collaborations. And I also encourage them to add their idea here, or I add it for them, so that we can put all of these different ideas for apps in the same context, because a lot of people have similar ideas, and they should be working together instead of building isolated projects. So by having a shared space, this becomes a vehicle, this becomes a curriculum, where we can use this to share one project space or one community space and move forward together. So anyone can go to map.hellohackers.org and click to add a dot, and you can type in your ideas, and I will add those to the background image when I update the background image. I'm working on making this into a Holochain app, so that extra step, which is centralized, will not be part of the process. Yeah.
So you're one of the core people that we have, right?
Yeah, I'm one of the team of about 30, and I'm one of this is a small, we're the hackathon team here, so we're a team of 5 now, 6.
That just kind of goes from place to place together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you guys have a hackathon today with your programming skills?
No, this is a short launch event because of various logistics issues. Yes.
We'll be back.
Yeah, this is like our first Berlin event, and we'll be doing more Berlin events probably.
So you can get lots of people.
Yeah.
Show your programmers.
Yeah, it's been really nice. Yeah, so the map is vehicle, like I was saying. So like that image of the map is actually kind of a preview of what Holochain, the kind of app environment might look like. As the map evolves, it'll resemble more and more using Holochain until we don't need the map anymore, because Holochain applications are the map, and we can just engage directly in that territory. Yeah, so again, whose map are you on? Which platform are you standing on? Where is your data stored? Great, and that's it. So yeah, Slinky is my personal idea for a Holochain mascot. It's a cat made out of honey, because it has all the apps inside of it, like the little icons for apps. and it oozes. And if there are any other mascots that try to challenge Slinky for the slot of mascot, Slinky will just absorb them in its honey. Yeah. So yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we're working to build this application ecosystem as quickly and fairly and robustly as possible. Thank you.